welcome back to another edition of Viewer Game Analysis. It's been a while since I've done one of these videos, but the offer still stands. Some people have been watching the channel for a long time. They know if you play a game that you feel was special in some way or great, or it has some kind of story attached to it, or you think the other viewers would be interested in seeing it, send me the game. I keep names private. I'm not in the business of trying to embarrass people and whatnot. But in this case, give you context on the game. We've got a Chess.com Blitz game here from one of our supporters. White is 1,500 and black is just shy of 1,500 in the Chess.com Blitz rating system. And we kick things off with E4. And we get a rare guest on the channel, the Nimzovich defense. And I'll go ahead and have a little surprise announcement here. I'm currently in the process of working on an E4 course for Chessable. I do have a number of projects that are in flux, but I'm already like 70% done. So I expect by the summertime, an E4 course will be done and in beta testing. So I'll go ahead and give you a taste. Against the Nimzovich, I recommend knight f3 because if black goes e5, you're getting right back to e4, e5 lines, direct transposition. The only other moves to consider are d5 and d6. d6 is going to be like a mediocre Perker Philidor, so d5 is really the main move, and after takes, we get this pseudo-Scandinavian. But the significant difference and thing that you have to understand between the Scandinavian and this position is typically in the Scandinavian, you want a pawn on c6 that's going to control key squares. So after a move like queen h5, we have the very strong knight b5. You're utilizing that space, which you typically do not have against the Scandi or center counter. So that's a quick little line, one of my recommendations. In the main game, though, f4 was played. And more than likely, white is a Grand Prix attack player or a King's Gambit player and is looking for some kind of transposition, or even an Austrian. All of the above. So anytime you're faced with a line that you're not quite sure how to deal with, this is already a good point of how many openings do they make use of the early f-pawn? And there's quite a few, but are there any openings where it just isn't seen? And in this case, if you play d5 and get this kind of center counter-esque position, the f-pawn isn't that useful. So I feel like d5 is objectively the best way to go, and in the event that the pawn is pushed, you're able to get the bishop outside the chain before playing e6, and black's got to be satisfied with the outcome of the opening. In the main game, though, b6 was played, and we've got a creative affair by both players here. So now let's make the most of the position and get an understanding of, say, the middle game and what I would change compared to our viewer. So knight f3, reasonable move. And already I will question the merits of playing bishop c4. And what I've found when analyzing games of players that are in certain rating bands, there's this penchant to want to play bishop c4, d3, knight f3, and that structure is only going to be good with e4, e5. In pretty much any other scenario, you will have better options or more aggressive options at your disposal. So now that b6 and e6 is played, this is more of, say, an Owens defense where the knight is misplaced. I would go for taking the center, supporting it with c3, and putting the bishop on d3. So we've got this healthy wall that we can press at the right moment once we've completed development. After bishop c4, knight f6, black is ready to hit in the center, attacking the pawn, or going d5. So we do need to address this. So I would say those players that love the structure, they're going to go for d3 like our player did in the game. More accurate, though, is understanding that d5 is going to come with counterplay and tempo, so you're going to have to lose time moving the bishop. So we need to prevent that, and in this case, e5 is strong. Not only are we taking away d5 as a possibility due to en passant ideas, but in the meantime, we are attacking that knight on f6. So after knight d5, d4, and the position's quite awkward for black. c3 and castles, and white just has a commanding space advantage here. But in the main game, d3 was played, then it gets towards equal waters, and bishop d6 is going to be most accurate for black here. You just need to castle, get out of the center, and get development. Queen d6, this is fallen under that category of never bring your queen out early. We've got other development that we could be doing, so optimize with that first. Good, get the king out of the center. Bishop b7. And knight c3 is fine. d4. And now, what is the most aggressive move? That's really where we need to start in these types of positions, because we're safe, we're ready to attack. Our opponent's king is still in the middle. So compare 3 different candidate moves and see what you like the best, which is most forcing. And you may even hit on a few more, like queen e2 check, rook e1, knight b5, and knight e4, dealing with the problem of the knight. So those 4 moves need to come into consideration. And I gotta say, I like the rook on this file, especially in the event that this pawn moves later. And in the main game, queen e2 check was played, but I strongly prefer going with this knight b5 move, because it's giving the opponent more room to go wrong. And it's getting a tempo on the queen immediately. So say queen d7, we have the strong knight e5, and though we're giving a piece, we're getting it right back. And notice how much stronger the rook is as it's exerting pressure on the f-file. And we also have ideas like queen g4 in the event of castling, and black's got some long-term problems here. But queen e2 was played the main game, and after bishop e7, knight e4. I definitely think taking with the pawn is better here, because we have more flexibility to kick. But taking with the queen, it's rough equality, f6. And black finally gets to castle, but has some issues here. So we can play queen f5 check. Bishop d2. Save the queen. And likely black should be looking to play f5 to try to shut off the eye of the queen on the long diagonal here. h5 was played, and now the game is quickly going to become one-sided. So what is the best way to coordinate your pieces, gain time, and get the attack? It all revolves around the e6 square. So rook e6, hitting the queen, rook a e1, and just in the course of a couple of moves, we see beautiful harmony on the e-file with the rooks. Bishop c8, getting off that potential pin. And now I really like this next move because it's the tipping point. After recently recording a course on Chessable for middle game thinking, I find myself asking the question more, what is our worst place piece? And though the bishop is doing a job, it's not aggressive. And bishop a4, adding more pressure here, and there's just really no good way to dissipate the pressure. Black opts to go for this, but then misses that you can capture the knight with c6, going right back. And now it's a case of you're up a piece. And too often I'll find that my students that are e4 players will get too fancy when they're winning. When you're up material, simplify the win. I'm not saying trade at all costs. That's a misnomer. Simplification of the win makes life easy. And in this case, it may come as a surprise to some, but the main move here by the engine is actually playing bishop b3, where if takes, you just have a clear attack on the king, whereas black doesn't really have any coordination to bother us. This is a very one-sided game where we're just going to hurt the opponent real bad. So after bishop d5, the very logical move, rook 6 to e2 is played, but you need to be actively looking when you're up material to kill counterplay and simplify the win. So h4, h3. No need to react. Bishop b3, good. Looking to initiate a trade that can't be avoided. So takes. Yep. Now the rooks are coordinated, but this knight is just holding down the shelter, and we don't have to worry about a rook on the g-file as long as we don't open things up. So let's turn our attention to bothering our opponent's king. b4, good. Knight takes d4. So in the event of a move like rook takes, we really don't have too much to worry about, as the queen is not going to be enough against our two rooks. g5 was played in the main game, and that theme for the overall game is simplification and killing counterplay. So there are a number of good moves here, but what is the best practical move to get this game done? Done not in the sense of our opponent just resigns checkmate, but done, I don't have to think anymore, I can go on autopilot to win the game. Rook e7, strong simplification, where we have take, check, and the rest here is a matter of technique, as the queen will likely trade for the two rooks, and we're just up two pieces. But even if we've got to trade our queen and a minor for the two rooks, this is still a very cleanly winning position. So we'll end the analysis there. Thank you for joining us for viewer game analysis. If you want your game analyzed, look right up there. We got some information. Hit me up.